Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson. Follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Williamson NFL. And I think you guys are aware that I write an article per week for the website. And I easily could have written today's article basically saying everyone stinks, the world's falling. But I wanted to get ahead a little bit of the offseason. And that's not to say the season is totally shot. But I want to be some of the first out there to start talking about specific players, their future here. And I probably won't revisit it until either the Steelers are eliminated or the season's over. But I did want to talk about every player on the roster, and that's what I wrote about, that is going to be an unrestricted free agent. Not guys that you can cut for cap reasons. There's a lot of that. They have a lot of space that they can open. They can get rid of a lot of not so great players. But I wanted to discuss the UFAs, and that's what I wrote about. A lot of you guys are chiming in as usual. Most of it's positive, which I appreciate, just talking it through what you need to do. So where did we start here? Okay. Now, there's a couple guys that are basically inconsequential. There's Chappell Russell and Anthony McFarland are restricted free agents. I just wanted to let people know that this exists. I don't really care what happens to either. McFarland can't get on the field. You can pick either up very cheap as a restricted deal, whatever. Renell Wren and Dylan Cook are exclusive rights free agents. We're basically ignoring all these guys, but I know they like Cook. He had a good camp. He'll be back in some capacity. So just wanted to get those dudes out of the way. So I'm going to go position by position. Well, first of all, let me bring something up. Example, Pro Football Focus right now has their top 50 free agents to be. 8 of them will get franchised. Another 8 will get resigned. They won't hit the market. Anyway, we're not going to talk about those guys now either. That's an off-season conversation. But any of these lists you see right now of the top free agents to be, you're not going to see any Steelers on it, which I think is a good thing. I think you could joke the other way around. Boy, wouldn't it be nice if the whole team was unrestricted free agents and you could start over because they stink so bad, blah, 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 blah. I guess. But the fact that no one of consequence, no Steelers are on these top free agents to be lists for national purposes, I think is a good thing. Mason Rudolph is the only quarterback. There really isn't a running back or tight end of note. Miles Boykin is really the only wide receiver. Really no offensive lineman. Montravis Adams and Armon Watts are both up on the D-line. I think you guys know I'm very fond of what they've done here this year. Marcus Golden's another guy I like. He's the only edge defender. And Quan Alexander is the only off-the-ball linebacker. In the secondary, you got Miles Killebrew, Levi Wallace, James Pierre, Chandon Sullivan, and Elijah Riley with expiring contracts. I think you could all, listening, could sleep at night without any of them coming back, But I do want to break it down a little further than that. I don't even know how to comment on Rudolph. We'll revisit this next week, maybe weeks to come. He's scheduled to start this week, but Pickett is going to practice. Don't rule that out completely. I think the real reason Rudolph is starting is basically he's not Mitch Trubisky. Trubisky was horrendous in this past game. Horrendous. And along those lines, it's become very clear to Tomlin, all of us, anybody really that's paying attention, obviously Tomlin, from week 9 last year, their bye, whenever things started to go well in Pickett era, that when the quarterback turns the ball over, they don't beat anybody. When he doesn't, they're in games and they can be highly competitive. Well, Rudolph fits that mold much, much, much more than Trubisky. Trubisky's a guy you can get out from. I don't think he'll be back. So can you bring Rudolph back on a similar deal? Assuming he plays this week, you'll learn a little bit more about him, but not much. I mean, and that goes for other teams as well that might want to sign him. They don't know any more than they did when they didn't want him last offseason. So he's sort of a standalone, worry about him later. Frankly, if he leaves, great. If he doesn't, great. Somebody else is going to be here besides Pickett. I have no doubt about that. All right, and then one other category. They're not all the same position, but Boykin, Killebrew, Pierre. they're special teamers. I mean, really, and nothing more. Killebrew's gotten thrust into safety. Pierre played a little corner. Boykin goes out there for 5 to 8 snaps a game. But they're here for special teams. You really don't even want them on offense and defense. In a perfect world, you build a roster if these guys are back where they never see the field except for special teams. Easier said than done over the course of the year. But these guys are the 3rd, 4th, and 5th on the team right now in special teams counts. And they would be higher if any of them were on like field goal protection. Like Herbig's ahead of them because he's on field goal protection. Boykin and Pierre also are not on field goal block. But basically, these are 4 of your core punt return, kickoff return guys. If you want to bring them back, great. I think they're all, especially Killebrew and Boykin, are very good at special teams. I don't pretend to watch special teams tape. But if they're making the same kind of money, fine. But think of them only as special teamers and good ones. So, again, they're kind of in their own little category as well. Quick break, and then we'll break some of this more down here immediately after. Okay, so I also lumped Adams, Watts, and Golden together because I think they're all good. I mean, if you could have them back basically doing what they're doing now, okay. Just base salary. None of those guys made more than $2.5 million this season, and I think they've all been worth that, as rotational guys. I don't know what Ogunjobi's future is, but if you could bring back these 3 or Golden and one of the D tackles, you could basically, and again, I never turn my nose up at a D lineman. This is not characteristic for me to say in the team building world, but you could probably go into the offseason saying, we're good at running back, tight end, all across the defensive front, and we can concentrate everything elsewhere. It'd be nice just to check that box where I don't need to get Cam Hayward's replacement or whatever, So I would be very interested in retaining Adams, Watts, and Golden. But at about the neighborhood they're making now, maybe a slight uptick or, a little more 2-year deal that you give them a little bit of money up front or whatever. But basically the same type of deal. Because I think they've been valuable. I think they've all been success stories that you brought in from other teams, depth pieces. Maybe Herbig goes past Golden next year. Maybe Liao or Loudermilk goes ahead of one of the D linemen. But in the meantime, they're fine. I mean, they're depth dudes that have been valuable for this team. Alexander Quan is similar to Adams, Watts, and Golden. But you got him super late in the process. And there's always linebackers of his ilk late in the process. He's a hard one to comment on because you'd love someone that runs around the field like he does and, again, just run it back with Holcomb and Roberts and kind of do what I was talking about with the defensive line and just say, front 7 is fine. I know some of you probably want them to go get Jack Lambert or Kendrell Bell, but I can live with a healthy trio of Roberts, Holcomb, Alexander, or someone very similar that isn't super expensive because you're going to need your resources for big ticket items. Maybe a quarterback, corner, tackle, expensive stuff. So what I don't know, though, is Alexander in terms of passing physicals. I think that hurt him this past offseason. He's injured again. He does have a pretty extensive, it's a rough word, injury history. So that's always really difficult for me to comment on, but they'll know better than anybody. They're dealing with his injury as we speak. Last thing, and we've kind of talked about this, all those dudes in the secondary I mentioned could go. Killebrew, if you want to keep him for special teams only, great. Maybe Pierre as well. But Wallace, adios. Sullivan, adios. And what I said here is, in fact, Minka and Porter are the foundation of the secondary going forward, and maybe the team can catch lightning in a bottle with a talented youngster like Darius Rush or Corey Trice. But other than that, the back end of the defense needs a total overhaul. I mean, Minka and Porter, great. You're thrilled with them. Rush and Trice, they're intriguing. You don't know that much about him. I know people are like, wow, Trice will be the corner opposite Porter. He was a 7th round pick and he's injured. You know, what you get out of those two is gravy. You bring them to camp, you get excited about them, but you don't count on those guys. I mean, what they give you is a bonus prize. So really, all those other dudes in the secondary, to me, adios. I'm not even interested in bringing you back on a very team-friendly deal. You can go. I mean, I'd love to play against you, to be very honest with you. I mean, so that's where we're at. Frankly, that's pretty promising. They have a fair amount of cap space now, kind of middle of the pack. They have the ability to make much more, which is great. You know, you move on from some dudes, Trubisky, I mentioned, some others. And the guys that are upcoming, there's nobody like Highsmith, like, boy, I have to bring him back. So that's a good move. I mean, and the guys you do bring back, you can at your terms, which you love. So I thought that'd be fun. We'll dig into games going forward here the rest of the week. Take care.